There is something sacred about the moment when a calendar turns and your soul whispers, I don't want to do life the same way again. Not because last year destroyed you, but because it revealed you. It showed you where you settled, where you shrank, where you survived when you were built to soar. A new year does not arrive to shame you. It arrives to invite you. And the invitation is not to do more, but to think differently. You don't need another year to prove that you can be average. You've already mastered blending in, showing up halfway, calling it humility when it was really fear. Average is comfortable. Average doesn't ask you to confront the habits you keep defending. Average lets you call potential patience and procrastination rest. But something in you is waking up in 2026 and saying, I can't afford to live numb anymore. That voice is not pressure, it's purpose. A new mindset begins when you stop waiting for permission to evolve. Some of you have been asking people who benefit from your smallness whether it's okay for you to grow. You've been editing your dreams so they don't intimidate the room. You've been diluting your voice so it doesn't disrupt familiar patterns. But growth was never meant to be convenient. Transformation is wholly disruption. It rearranges your comfort so your calling can breathe. Average thinking says, at least I tried. Renewed thinking asks, did I obey what I knew? Because trying is easy when you're not fully invested. Obedience costs you your excuses. It requires you to admit that you know better now, and knowing better means you're responsible for choosing better. 2026 is not asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be present, to stop ghosting your own potential. You don't need a new personality. You need a new perspective. The reason you keep repeating cycles is not because you lack discipline, but because your mind keeps returning to familiar conclusions. You keep assuming this is as good as it gets. You keep calling patterns personality traits. You keep spiritualizing stagnation. But what if this is the year you challenge the narrative that says, this is just who I am? What if who you are is still unfolding? Being average often looks like living on autopilot. You pray the same prayers, expect the same outcomes, tolerate the same dysfunction, and then wonder why nothing shifts. But a renewed mind interrupts autopilot. It pauses and asks, why do I keep choosing this? Not with condemnation, but with curiosity. Healing begins when you get brave enough to examine your own patterns without self-hatred. You cannot build an extraordinary life with an unexamined mind. Every breakthrough you admire in someone else started as a private decision to think differently. They decided not to agree with the limitations placed on them. They stopped rehearsing the pain that happened to them and started rehearsing the promise within them. Not because they forgot the hurt, but because they refused to let it have the final word. 2026 is calling you higher. But elevation requires separation, not from people, but from mindsets. You may have to separate from the belief that struggle is your identity, from the idea that you must earn rest through exhaustion, from the lie that if you slow down, you'll be left behind. Sometimes average is just unhealed hustle wearing a badge of honor. You are allowed to want more without feeling guilty, more peace, more clarity, more alignment, more joy that doesn't depend on external validation. Wanting more does not mean you are ungrateful. It means you are aware. Awareness is the first step toward transformation. And transformation rarely starts with a crowd cheering you on. It starts with a quiet decision to stop betraying yourself. This year, stop negotiating with the version of you that is comfortable but unfulfilled. Stop romanticizing survival when you were created for abundance. Stop calling delay discernment when you're really afraid of the weight your yes might carry. Average living keeps you busy. Purposeful living makes you intentional. Your mindset shapes your momentum. If you believe you are behind, you will rush and miss the lesson. If you believe you are incapable, you will quit before you begin. But if you believe that growth is possible, even when it's uncomfortable, you will show up differently. You will speak up sooner. You will rest without guilt. You will say no without explaining yourself into exhaustion. This is the year you stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never meant to contain you. The year you stop explaining your worth to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. The year you stop calling your intuition overthinking. and start honoring it as wisdom. A renewed mind does not mean you won't feel fear. It means fear no longer gets to drive. You are not late. You are not behind. You are becoming. And becoming requires patience with yourself and courage with your choices. Average living asks you to blend in. Purpose asks you to stand out, even when your knees are shaking, especially when your knees are shaking. So as 2026 unfolds, don't just set goals, set boundaries, set intentions for how you think, not just what you do. Protect your mind like it's sacred ground, because it is. What you allow to live there will determine what you build with your hands. This is not the year to play small, quiet, or safe. This is the year to be honest, aligned, and awake, to step into rooms as yourself without apology, to believe that obedience is stronger than fear, that clarity is better than chaos, that you were never created to be average, especially not now, especially not when everything in you is rising, stretching, unfolding into the kind of life that no longer fits the old version of you, the old excuses, the old limits, but moves forward with intention, courage, and a mind that finally agrees with the greatness already planted within you. A renewed mindset is the birthplace of every lasting transformation. Long before habits change, before environments shift, before doors open or close, something happens internally. The way you think about yourself, your capacity, your past, and your future quietly shapes every decision you make. Many people try to change their lives by rearranging external pieces while leaving their internal framework untouched. But when the mind remains the same, life eventually returns to familiar patterns. This is why transformation does not begin with effort. It begins with awareness. Awareness asks you to slow down and notice the narratives you keep repeating. The thoughts you accept as truth often operate so quietly that you mistake them for facts. You tell yourself you are just being realistic when, in truth, you are rehearsing limitation. You call it wisdom when it is really fear that has grown comfortable in your thinking. A renewed mindset interrupts those automatic conclusions and asks deeper questions. Why do I assume this will fail before I even begin? Why do I minimize my desires before anyone else can? Why do I keep choosing what feels familiar over what feels aligned? Average thinking thrives on autopilot. It allows life to happen to you instead of through you. You wake up, respond to responsibilities, manage crises, and repeat routines without ever examining whether the life you are maintaining is the life you actually want. Autopilot is not laziness. It is often survival mode that overstayed its welcome. At one point, it protected you. It helped you cope. But what once kept you safe may now be keeping you small. A renewed mindset gives you permission to update your operating system. Thinking differently does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to let past experiences define future possibilities. Pain has a way of teaching us lessons that feel permanent. Disappointment trains the mind to expect less, so it will hurt less. But expecting less also limits what you pursue. When you begin to renew your mind, you stop allowing yesterday's wounds to dictate tomorrow's choices. You acknowledge what happened without building your entire identity around it. This process requires honesty, and honesty can feel uncomfortable. It is easier to say you lack discipline than to admit you lack belief. It is easier to blame timing than to confront fear. But when you renew your mindset, you stop lying to yourself in subtle ways. You begin to recognize where you have been complicit in your own stagnation, not with shame, but responsibility. Responsibility empowers because it places choice back in your hands. A renewed mind also reshapes how you define success. Instead of measuring your life against other people's timelines, you begin to listen to your own alignment. Comparison loses its power when clarity takes its place. You stop chasing what looks impressive and start pursuing what feels purposeful. This shift does not make you immune to doubt, but it teaches you how to move forward without needing constant validation. One of the most powerful aspects of renewing your mindset is learning to separate identity from performance. When your worth is tied to outcomes, every setback feels like a personal failure. But when your mind is renewed, you understand that mistakes are information, not content.